Welcome to my 21st video. This video is about the announcement, I think it was last week, of the Zuckerberg initiative to cure all disease basically in the next 70 years. I wanted to explain why this initiative is so important. It's a 10-year program basically to speed up medical process, to speed up the development of medicine, to partly to change the direction of medicine, and it's a lot more powerful than I think it looks at first glance. So this is an initiative launched by Mark Zuckerberg and his wife Priscilla Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg is obviously the founder of Facebook, and they've recently had a baby, I believe, and or maybe even they have a couple of kids, but the idea is could they cure all disease in the lifetime of their children, and what effect would that have on the earth? So the first question is all disease curable? So far, basically, the medical consensus is yes, and that has a very interesting consequence, which is, again, as far as the medical profession and scientists can tell, the reason humans die is that we get sick. It's that simple. If we didn't get sick, there's no reason why we wouldn't live for extremely long periods of time. I mean, there are things on Earth that routinely live, I think a couple of hundred years, and you can go to the zoo and see animals that are over 100 years old. It's a giant turtle or whatever. So there's no real reason why humans shouldn't live for a long time. Life expectancy is obviously now a lot higher than it was, and I really believe that if you're alive now in your, let's say, 30s and 40s, and if you make it through the next 20 years, then I think your life expectancy is going to be maybe 120 years. If you have children, it's very, very possible that they're going to be living a couple of hundred years, possibly 300 years, possibly forever. So that's one thing, is it possible? Another point is the founder of Facebook the right person to do it? I would say yes, absolutely. What the tech startups have learnt, quite honestly, in a very, very short space of time, technology startups, technology companies have learnt such a huge amount. I mean, I am a very negative person when technology is concerned, because I think it's often going in the wrong direction. But I'm absolutely the first to admit that there are things that tech companies understand about how you get things done quickly that just other people just do not get. Tech companies are better at communicating among their staff more than basically any other group of people on Earth. They understand that small, tight teams can achieve huge things. They understand that groups of people should never really be bigger than 100 or 150 maximum. There are companies that are non-tech companies that have taken these ideas on board. There's a company called Berghaus that makes hiking clothing and rucksacks and things for outdoors gear, and they have the policy that if any division grows to more than 100 and something people, they just split it off and make it a new division. That number 150 is the number of people that humans can kind of make good connections with at once. It's called the Dunbar number. So tech companies know a whole lot of stuff that other people don't know, and that includes the medical profession. So the Zuckerbergs are putting some money in, not on the face of it a huge amount at all. It's been pointed out that in some newspaper articles, for example, that a lot of medical charities and NPOs at the moment spend this amount of money in a year that the Zuckerbergs are proposing to put in over a 10-year period. But that's not the point. The point is the money is a very, very small part of it. What the Zuckerbergs are going to do is they're going to get engineers and medical people and put them together. They're going to put medical people together who have never been together before. I'm getting my cancer treatment in Japan, and here what's called the multidisciplinary approach is actually quite unusual. So when I first went into hospital, I met with a surgeon, and he basically made a decision there and then about what he was going to do, just following the standard protocol of what you do for people with terminal cancer. Whereas in England, you meet the surgeon. If the surgeon is the first person, you might meet a surgeon, you might meet another type of consultant, you might meet an oncologist. And they're going to talk to you, and they'll go away, and there will be a meeting that week called a multidisciplinary team meeting, where there will be a surgeon, or possibly even a couple of surgeons, an oncologist or a couple of oncologists, some specialist nurses, a radiologist who I think treats disease with radiation. This is about if it was for cancer. A radiographer whose job is to give expert advice about what the scans mean. The oncologists and the surgeons can look at the scans, obviously, but a radiographer has much more expertise, particularly when it's borderline cases, where you have cancers that are very small and may be cancer or may not be a cancer. So you have this whole team of people. Now, in Japan, whenever I criticise or say anything negative about the health service in Japan, I have to put it in the context of it's the number one health service on earth. So they have statistically they have the best outcomes, particularly for cancer, which is one reason why I came back here for treatment from the UK. But could it be much, much better with a multidisciplinary approach? Some hospitals they have it, many don't. So the Zuckerbergs are going to be getting together scientists and oncologists and engineers all in the same room. So it's far more about taking a leadership role and hopefully teaching many of the things that tech startups know. Tech startups are, as I said, very, very, very good at communication, very good at what's called rapid prototyping, so they can develop things very, very, very quickly. You have a bunch of people discussing a problem in the morning, and by the afternoon, they've got a physical or a software solution, maybe a very, very early version, but they've got it by the afternoon or by the next day, using techniques like laser cutters, 3D printers, pick-and-place machines that are essentially a desktop-sized robot for building electronic circuits. They've got access to tools like plasma cutters, and these tools are now, they're embarrassingly cheap. They cost nothing at all. But you won't see them in hospitals. You wouldn't see staff trained on using a 3D printer. I mean, think about a nurse who has a good idea for some kind of clip for attaching a tube to a patient's clothing, and they come up with some kind of idea. And the idea will probably go no further. They might mention it to a colleague, they'll probably forget about it. There might be a very structured, hierarchical, slow process to get that idea into a prototype form, taking over a year. And a tech startup would say, this is a good idea, let's do a sketch, stick it on the computer, print one out in a 3D printer, and try it out. Let's print, if it seems to work a bit, let's print 100 of them and go down to the local hospital and see if people, nurses will try it out. So those kind of things are really, really important. Tech startups know about learning quickly more than basically any other group of people on the earth. Rapid learning. They know about making decisions with very, very partial, unreliable evidence or information, because that's what they have to do every day. They know about risk management. It's often thought that entrepreneurs are people who take risks. It's absolute nonsense. It's completely opposite. They're very, very I don't want to say risk averse, they're very good at managing risk. They're very good at hedging. So they do something, but then they also do the opposite, so that if their initial proposal was wrong, which it often is, the hedge protects them a bit. They'll do things like work on multiple things at once, because they know that most of them are going to fail, but the ones that succeed are probably big enough to make up for everything else. So the Zuckerberg initiative is hugely important. I don't know if there's any good progress going to be made in whatever lifetime I have left. I really hope so. Might inspire some people a bit. Part of what this comes out of, I think, is think of those big tech startups, especially those unicorn companies, which are technology companies that have reached $1 billion in size in a very short amount of time, often a few years, whereas it used to be billion-dollar companies took decades and decades to make. One of the things is the startup founders who've got to the stage where they've got a lot of money, they've achieved all their life goals, and they think, well, the only things left are space and now medicine. And it's very interesting with space that there's been almost no progress with regular space travel since the first people went to the moon in 1969. And it's not a technology problem, it's a mindset problem, it's a direction problem, because space exploration was done by huge agencies like NASA, who their main interest is seeing how far they can travel, or how far they can put a robot, or very good noble goals, how much can we learn about other planets. But they weren't interested in, can we make a cheap package holiday for someone to go to the moon or the space station. And then you have the European Space Agency, which for most of my lifetime was just doing satellites, basically, communication satellites, spy satellites. Satellite TV was, I think, the main thing it was made for. And now you've got these tech companies, or non-tech companies like the Virgin Group, Richard Branson, who have made huge progress in just the last few years, often using old ideas from NASA, like old bits of alternatives to space shuttles, for example, and in some cases actually buying the physical hardware of NASA that was just kept in a warehouse somewhere. So in the next few years, I mean, within 5 years, you're going to see people regularly going to space, just to orbit the Earth. Within the next 5 years, the tickets have been sold already, $100,000, I believe the ticket is for, with Virgin Galactic, and you get to kind of go and orbit the moon, orbit the Earth rather. But it's so telling that that was not a technology problem; it was an attitude problem and a directional problem. So I think there's a lot to be hopeful about with the Zuckerberg initiative, and please have a think about it. It's worth thinking about these kind of things, your experiences with the medical systems, how things can be improved. Thank you ever so much for listening and watching. If this has been of any interest to you, please leave a comment. Any questions, that would be great. And if you can, please make a small donation or a large donation at my Cancer Fund website that's helping me fight terminal cancer. On paper, at least, my life expectancy is kind of 5 to 7 months from now. Hopefully I'm going to last longer than that. I'm going to fight all the way. But my Cancer Fund website is at www.matthewdons.org. Thanks ever so much for your time, and I'm really looking forward to your comments. Cheers.